can't get out of Dodge at the 11th hour. I noticed that you started doing some of your videos from home, and I encourage that because people have to think about strictly operating out of their homes, hunkering down for extended periods of time, because there may come a time in the very near future where it simply isn't safe to commute into the big city. People have to think in terms of hunkering down, living self-sufficiently as much as possible, making their own power, pumping their own water up out of the ground, growing their own food, raising their own livestock, and providing for their own security. Because all those systems, if we depend on others for them, are probably going to be going away. And anyone who's not prepared to face that new paradigm is going to become a statistic.
Now, I want to raise this point to you, and we're going to go to break here in a moment and come back, but start answering it now. Again, you don't toot your own horn, but you were almost 2 decades ago able to foresee much of what is now unfolding. And you even predicted the time frame with great accuracy. I know the future is fluid. There's different futures there depending on what we do. But seeing the awakening, tracking its trajectory versus the tyrant's trajectory, A, what do you think the future holds if you had to give us a general dead reckoning analysis, A, and then B, how do we change that analysis from what you currently see?
Well, I think I can foresee an economic collapse regardless of what anyone does at this point, because the level of debt that's built up globally has gotten so large that it's absolutely unsustainable under a traditional interest-based debt economy for those debts to be repaid. It's mathematically impossible. So I think we're going to see a global economic collapse, and the severity of it depends on a number of different things.
Stay there. Let's come back and then see how you see all of that interacting within the collapse. How does it run from bad to worse? How do we get ready? With James Wesley Rawles. Stay with us.
We're on.
You better believe it. You know, I've had these liners for like 17 years, different variants of, we're in a war. The war is now, leading a frontal assault, Infowar. Listen, this is real, okay? The globalists want to deindustrialize the planet and have giant throngs of poor people that they control. Then in all their major public documents, they say they're going to release bioweapons after that. And, I mean, Dick Cheney wrote in the PNAC document in 2000, September 20th, that they need to use the media to promote and legitimize the use of race-specific bioweapons. That means killing certain groups of people with a bioweapon, where you release it and all Northern Europeans die, or all Arabs die, or all Chinese die. You're like, well, they can't tailor it just to Chinese. Yeah, they can. They've got it where it would, they've got these genomes so targeted where it will kill the dominant Chinese genetic line and not even kill the Japanese. They've got them so tailored they can kill Arabs of certain derivations and not kill Jews. And Dick Cheney says we need to use the media to legitimize this. That's what it is when they've got all these movies and TV shows. I mean, I already knew this, but they had a C-SPAN event like 5 years ago where Homeland Security threw a party for some of the people from 24 and said, thank you for working with us. You've really helped get our image up and, you know, helped promote taking the gloves off and torture, basically. They said taking the gloves off. Secret arrest, torture, disappearing, internal checkpoints. Cops watch this, the weak-minded ones, military and others, and start fantasizing. But because most of them are too professional, they create TSA, which is now on the highways. They always create a goon force that doesn't go through the original academies that have enough pride to not teach absolute tyranny. You have to twist somebody that came out of the FBI system or out of the state police academy. You don't have to twist a TSA. But I'm ranting. Our guest is here. Every time I get him on, he gets me thinking, and I run on at the mouth. James Wesley Rawles has been an enthusiastic survivalist since his teenage years. He is now a survivalist author and lecturer and the editor of survivalblog.com, one of the biggest out there, survivalblog.com. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree from San Jose State University, minor degree in military science history and military history, a former U.S. Army intelligence officer, who was a captain and attended all the big specialized spy schools. We'll just leave it at that. But he joins us here. I just want to plug, you support the broadcast and what we're doing, and you get vital information. You may think you know it all. Reading these books will make you get deeper into the thought process and then pass it on, pay it forward to others. Behind the Green Mask, 170-something pages. Let me give you the technical on that because I'm going to go from memory here. Yep, 168 pages. 168 pages, give it to city council, county commissioners. A lot of times when we call some city council person fighting tyranny, they're a listener or somebody gave them my film. They don't believe it. They go look at it. They find out it's true. Every city council member in your area needs to get this book, and we've got it discounted at Infowars.com. Everybody needs to read Survivors, James Wesley Rawles' new bestseller book. Everybody needs to get Strategic Relocation with all the documents, maps, color, photos. I mean, this is a must-have available at Infowars.com. We're going to get Joel on for a couple hours on the nightly news soon to do a whole special on this. I want to get a bunch of graphics and production ready before we do it. It may be next week. The point is, win, win, win. Get the information, spread it around to others, and support us financially and the authors and researchers, Infowars.com. Or call 888-253-3139 if you want to call an order or have any questions, 888-253-3139. Or you can write to us at P.O. Box 19549, Austin, Texas, 78760. All right. I get angry knowing this is coming down, okay? I mean, I believe everything I'm saying and more because I can't even articulate what I know and understand. That's why I tend to blow up, because I'm sick of it. And I'm tired of the public being simple-minded and not wanting to understand things or coming back with canned responses. The globalists are digging in. The government is digging in. The bankers who did this are all digging into armored redoubts on record. Okay? Armored keeps. I shouldn't even be here. I've moved out of the country, got a well, trying to put solar in. Don't even have time to mess with it because I'm always down here. I've got to get communications equipment in. I've got to get ham radio stuff in and learn how to use it. I got some of it. I've got to create, but I can't do everything is the point. I've got to do the basics. Firearms, ammo, training, food, medical supplies, most importantly, friends. But we're going to get into, if you can stay a little bit in the next hour, we'll do 20 minutes or so on solutions, James, and take a few calls, but and some of the basics that you write about at your survivalblog.com. But let's expand here for a moment into my question that I just posed in the last segment. Is the collapse coming? You said yes. What are the severities from your research? And again, how do you see it shaking out? How do you see the collision being like? How bad will it be? See, because people don't know. 7 million people, major universities estimate, starved to death or died from complications of malnutrition during the 10 years, roughly, of the Great Depression. Look it up, folks. Just type in 7 million died during Great Depression. Major university studies. They kept it quiet. 90% were semi-self-sufficient. Now we're 89% city, 11% rural. Only half of that, 5.5% or so, are self-sufficient. And what's going to happen is the government is preparing to come in and basically commandeer stuff. But they don't have the infrastructure. And people are going to start fighting back. You're going to be called terrorist. Once you're called terrorist, so what? I mean, what is the probability of massive bloodshed when the Fed boys come around with their armored war wags trying to, pilfer the women? Go ahead.
Well, it's hard to say what the severity of it will be. We definitely have a economic collapse coming. At the near end of the spectrum would be a repeat of the Depression of the 1930s, but as you mentioned, we live in a society that's far less self-sufficient and far more technologically dependent than the society of the 1930s, so that even with just a repeat of the Depression of the 30s, we're going to see quite a bit of loss of life. The far end of the spectrum would be a total collapse. The situation just snowballing completely out of control. If power grids go down, and there's actually 3 grids, they go down, all bets are off. If the grids go down, we could see the cities running out of drinking water, and within 72 hours.
The reactors are going to start melting down. They can't even keep it from melting down now. Society's so degenerate.
Yeah, that's the other wild card in the whole situation is not the reactors themselves, but it's more the cooling ponds that are at risk. Part of the environmental regulations and one of the things that the Green Revolution brought us was all this foot dragging about Yucca Mountain and a safe place to store spent nuclear fuel rods. So for the last 15 years, all those spent rods have been building up and building up and building up right at the reactor sites in these enormous spent fuel cooling ponds. Well, the ponds have such a high density of spent fuel in them now that they require constant replenishment of cool water from outside, or they boil off. And once the ponds boil off, they'll melt down, just like at Fukushima. Well, that's the case for reactors all the way from coast to coast. And one of the reasons that I stress moving to the inland Northwest states is that we're upwind of most of the nuclear power plants. Anyone who's downwind, they better think in terms of having a home fallout shelter, because we could have unintentional fallout coming from all of these nuclear fuel ponds that melt down. There's so many risks out there, they're almost impossible to count. And it's a cascade of risks. There's a cascade of events if the power grid goes down. The 18-wheel trucks are not going to be rolling. The nuclear power plants are going to be failing, and their cooling ponds will be melting down. We're going to see all the automated reordering systems for virtually every aspect of our modern commerce will come to a screeching halt because it's all computer controlled.
And then people say, oh, Alex, just interrupt briefly. People say, oh, Alex, or oh, Wesley, the reactors have their own power. If stuff's failing down the line, they can only send massive amounts of power. They can't sit there and fire the plant up and use the little bit they need to keep the plant going. See, people don't realize how complex this stuff is and how it's very finely tuned, all of it. And now the society's crumbling so fast that they can't even find good managers to keep trains working right. Reactors are rotting. I mean, really, humanity has just turned into a bunch of jellyfish.
Yeah, the level of complexity that exists now, it keeps growing. It keeps growing year by year. The latest on the power grids is there's an effort right now to do an intertie between the eastern grid, the western grid, and the Texas grid. So even if one grid were to stay up, if they do this intertie, all the grids will collapse simultaneously. The level of complexity keeps going up year after year. The level of interdependence of these systems keeps going up. So the level of vulnerability keeps going up year after year. It's really a wonder we haven't seen a large-scale grid collapse already. And when you take outside factors into play, not just the grid itself and its complexity, but things like EMP or things like solar